Witness arrived, I believe, Mr. Chairman.
Has arrived. Okay, then let's go to the main event. The main event is 2338 by Senator McKeon and myself and Senator Mukherjee. The Climate Superfund Act imposes liability on certain fossil fuel companies for certain damages caused by climate change and establishes a program for the DEP to collect and distribute compensatory payments. Senator McKeon, would you like to say a few things?
I will defer to what I would imagine will be a lot of witnesses, and maybe save my comments to the very end.
Okay. And let me point out to everybody, it's going to be an extensive hearing. Please, number one, please don't read it. Reading is the most boring way to transfer information. If you've given it to us as a statement, we're going to read it, or we are in the process of reading it now. But it would be nice to just orally present what your position is. And we have a whole bunch of witnesses who actually have been invited in some circumstances because they bring a unique perspective. Let me take off the list people who do not want to testify first. Taking off the list, Alice Freund from myself, Third Act, New Jersey. In favor, no need to testify. Jeanette Bergeron, Food and Water Watch, in favor, no need to testify. Andrew Park, New Jersey Building and Construction Trades, opposed, no need to testify. Maya Aronoff from Estados Unidos, in favor, no need to testify. Doug O'Malley, in favor, no need to testify. Amy Hansen, New Jersey Conservation Foundation, in favor, no need to testify. Francine Pfeiffer from NJDA, in favor, no need to testify. Kevin Doherty, Empower New Jersey, in favor, no need to testify. Rosella Sabatini, in favor, no need to testify. Abby Ladins from the Associated Construction Contractors, opposed, no need to testify. Mary Sudargis, Food and Water Watch, in favor, no need to testify. Donald Wolf, Food and Water Watch, in favor, no need to testify. Brian Sharp, Utility and Transportation Contractors Association, opposed, no need to testify. David Pringle, Empower New Jersey, NMCA, in favor, no need to testify. Nandini Checo, Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, in favor, no need to testify. Ron Sable from Smart TD, opposed, no need to testify. Ron Sable, a second time, representing New Jersey Seed, opposed, no need to testify. Lois Kraus, Beyond Plastics, New Jersey, in favor, no need to testify. Danielle Pla, Environmental Advocate from South Jersey, in favor, no need to testify. Brian Thompson, Monmouth Beach Environmental Commission, in favor, no need to testify. Ben Zovic, Climate Revolution Action Network, in favor, no need to testify. Anjali Ramos, New Jersey Sierra Club, in favor, no need to testify. Mary Ellen Pepard, New Jersey Food Council, opposed, no need to testify. Eileen Keene from NFIB, opposed, no need to testify. Nina Matola-Jaborska from NJC, I think that's Citizen Action. In favor, no need to testify. Susan Mikitis from Food and Water Watch. In favor, no need to testify. Jean Lemberg, citizen. In favor, no need to testify. John Goodnight from the Americans for Prosperity. Opposed, no need to testify. Lisa Rose, Food and Water Watch. In favor, no need to testify. Jan Berry Crum, Food and Water Action. In favor, no need to testify. Cheryl George, citizen. In favor, no need to testify. Robert Jorio, citizen, I think from Fairlawn. In favor, no need to testify. Marty Young, Clean Water Action. In favor, no need to testify. Lois Kraus, Beyond Plastics. In favor, no need to testify. Kevin Hagan, New Jersey Pipe Trades, and I guess on behalf of also Mike Tranberg, who I think is now the head of the pipe trades for the state. So, we're down to a mere down to a mere 14. So let me re-emphasize. Brevity is the soul of wit. Please do not repeat over and over again things that people have already said. And then finally, don't read anything. If you have a statement, give it to us, we'll take a look at it. So let's get started with Jerome Wagner, an economist from Columbia University, in favor of the bill, and has some unique insights, I think, on the economics of it. And by the way, I saw your resume. I thought it was fun. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do in real life?
Happy to. Okay, first of all, 3 months ago I had no glasses, now I have bifocals, so let's start with that. Colonoscopy territory. And I've been...
everyone, many folks.
Clean bill of health. Sorry. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. So yes, I've been a climate economist. Basically since before it was a thing. I called myself a climate economist as a 17-year-old in 1997 in Austria when I didn't speak this particular language. And now I teach at Columbia Business School. By some accounts, one of the more conservative institutions of higher learning in New York City. I teach the most popular elective at Columbia Business School. I co-teach the most popular elective called Business and Climate Change, which is basically Econ 101 applied to global energy markets, oil and gas markets, and of course, clean technologies, solar, wind, batteries, and the like. While I'm still in the boasting phase, I currently have a visiting PhD student, chemical engineer from ETH Zurich, who arrived a week after February 28th with long planned study visit with plans to further his dissertation while here working with an economist to get a bit of that angle in his dissertation work. We have now spent the last 2.5, 3 months building what I still believe is the world's first ever open, global, transparent oil pricing model, globalscope.io, for anyone who would like to check it out. It's the sort of model that predicted what was happening in the global oil markets better than markets. Right, you strip away the irrationalities of it all, you look at the physical mass balances of what happens, supply and demand in global oil markets, and you predict the price of oil, Brent crude, 3 weeks faster than public markets. Now, right on topic, because this is about what happens to global oil prices because of this bill. Or at least that's the fundamental underpinnings behind the arguments of why it may or may not affect prices at the pump. And might be very disappointing to hear that there is exactly zero effect of what happens in Trenton, New Jersey to affect global oil prices. So my point is about as simple as it can be. It is theoretical. It is Econ 101 or maybe 102 applied. Making polluters pay will not have any effect whatsoever on consumers, households on the one hand, taxpayers on the other, except, of course, through the $50 billion raised. There is simply no credible evidence that this bill can somehow raise gas prices at the pump. Not how oil markets work, not what Economics 101 says. Actually, quite the opposite. There is theoretical and empirical evidence that gas prices can't change because of this bill. I submitted a written testimony to this effect with many more details, but just once again, the main point, gas prices are set by global oil markets. They move for all sorts of reasons, chief among them the sort of geopolitical vagaries we are currently experiencing. So for example, when somebody starts bombing Iran on February 28th, and surprise, surprise, not a surprise, but the Strait of Hormuz gets shut down within a week, oil prices jump. They doubled. They jump because of supply shocks like this. They also, for example, jump because of demand shocks. So for example, when battery prices fall by yet another 50% over the last 14 months or so, on top of the amazing price declines in lithium-ion batteries for quite a while by now. Why do they fall? Well, because batteries are technology, and frankly, like any technology, yes, this one has a battery too, those technologies can only get better and cheaper over time. Right? Nobody forces us to buy the new one. Turns out these things never get cheaper, they just allegedly get better. But lithium-ion batteries for vehicles get cheaper and better too. Okay, so when we then take political steps, not in this bill, of course, but let's say at the federal level, to encourage us not to drive EVs, put it politely, or throw stuff into the system to discourage us, what happens? Well, demand for EVs goes down. Demand for gasoline at the pump goes up. Those of us still pumping gas will now face more competition. Oil prices go up. It's now more expensive to fill up a vehicle. So yeah, by passing policies at the federal level to discourage EVs, we actually have the sort of effects that presumably we don't like. Gas at the pump goes up. But I digress, because none of this has anything to do with this bill in question simply because this bill does not affect oil prices. It doesn't affect global oil supply. It doesn't affect global oil demand, at least not directly. It simply makes polluters pay for a portion of the costs they've been able to push onto households and taxpayers. Gas prices are set as a global commodity. Gas prices jump when there's a supply shock. They jump when there's a demand shock. The fossil fuel industry knows this, which is why they fight against legislation like this across the country. So I'm here to say that this bill does not, cannot affect gas prices at the pump. Thank you for your attention. Happy to answer any questions you have.
How about an example? Deepwater Horizon in the Gulf of America.
Yes. I believe
That
it
was
was the Gulf of Mexico.
pretty devastating impact on supplies, or at least supplies from that area. What was the impact on the gasoline prices there?
Zero. And by the way, it was $65 billion. Just one company alone, BP. Now, of course, they don't like to call it a BP spill. It was the Deepwater Horizon spill. Never mind that. It was $65 billion paid for by BP, Deepwater Horizon. And sorry to say, but it had no effect on global oil prices. And I can actually, maybe if I may just add one more sentence to this, I can tell you this because actually, including me being here right now, anything I've ever done in my life is publicly available on my website, gwagner.com. I spent 18 hours with the executive team of BP after the BP Deepwater Horizon spill. Interesting 18 hours. I can tell you there is no way whatsoever to justify, for example, anything other than saying, yes, this is a charge, a fee, a justified charge fee for cleanup costs in that case, that is clearly bad for shareholders, no doubt. Consumers, taxpayers benefit. Taxpayers benefit because it's not taxpayers paying for the cleanup, and consumers, households benefit because, well, there are plenty individuals directly affected by that spill in what was then back then still called the Gulf of Mexico. The rest of us simply have zero effect because BP helped finance something that, again, indirectly benefits all of us. Cheaper seafood, for example, cleaner, cheaper seafood, for example. Directly zero effect on oil prices, gas prices, prices at the pump.
So I understand your logic. I think you're saying that when the damage that has been done by the burning of fossil fuels for the last number of years, they have impacts on communities. And it's not just the pollution. I mean, we're talking about global climate change. We're talking about mainly floods and fires.
Yep.
And we have this huge discussion going on in New Jersey whether what we should do about PAC and real rules. Should there be an elevation required on new construction? Because many people, including myself, believe that New Jersey's in for some tough days ahead from all climate change.
Yep.
So if you start with the premise that the oil companies were substantially responsible for it, that should be examined. And you take a look at New Jersey's already existing damages. I mean, we've seen some estimates, and I'm hoping somebody will testify about what those damages are already incurred in New Jersey. The question is, who pays for it? Do the citizens of the towns pay for it, or the state pay for it, or do the companies that clearly are responsible for a good portion of the damage? And you're telling us that, because we're going to hear the next argument is that if you do this bill, gasoline's gonna go through the roof, and all the customers, all the people who choose are gonna pay for it. You're testifying directly in opposition to that, because I understand your testimony.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, the people who pay for it are the shareholders and out of the current profits of the oil companies, correct?
Yes, I mean, happy to get more technical, but that's Econ 101, yes.
Okay, any questions?
Real quick, that was my point. So if we say to these oil companies, here's a $50 billion tax bonding penalty, whatever it's gonna be,
Yep.
they just basically take it on the chin and it doesn't trickle down to us.
Apologies for the technical term, but it sucks to, if you are the shareholder or a shareholder of one of those oil companies. The rest of us does not see the difference. And right, so again, there's lots of ways to say this, but so here's one. There are three sources of money in the world: shareholders, consumers, households, ratepayers, and taxpayers. And economies don't usually do finite pies, right? So the pie grows and so on, productivity, of course. But when it comes to footing certain bills, three sources of money in the world. And if it's not shareholders, if it's not the oil companies who pay, who else is left? Well, it's taxpayers, literally all of us. Or it's households. So the household forced to fortify, retrofit, adapt by, for example, raising seawalls or raising their home, quite literally, would have to foot that bill themselves. Except, there are other ways to pay for this. Polluter pays, and this is now Climate Econ 101. There's like one principle, right? Like when you put a bunch of economists in a room, the usual thing they say for climate change is price each ton of CO2 and get out of the way. Which, by the way, is not the full story. That might be Climate Econ 101. 102 is, of course, more complex. Polluter pays is about as core a principle as one can formulate when it comes to climate economics.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, and thank you. Thank you, Professor. Thanks for taking your time to be here. We all appreciate it. I don't know if you've done this quantification, but maybe an estimate. If you can't, you can't. But the data in New Jersey's got 136 miles of coastline, of which much of which is on barrier islands, billions upon billions of dollars of property, as well as tax revenue. We've got some of the world's busiest ports in the form of Newark and Bayonne. We've got the Meadowlands.
Yep.
Estimate as it relates to the impact that it would have if we allow those places to be rendered, if not useless, unable to be used in their current form.
So I've not done this calculation myself. I'll be enjoying a soccer game at the Meadowlands, October 22nd, 8 p.m., Norway, Senegal. But other than that, I can't say from personal experience or personal calculations what the actual costs are going to be to New Jersey itself. What I can say is, one of bread and butter of climate economists is calculating the dollars and cents, cents would be false precision, of climate risk quantified. That calculation is called calculating the social cost of carbon. So I've done that at the global level. I've not done this calculation.
That's on a national level, ages?
Sort of, kind of. Basically, there's still a big argument that it should still be the global number applied at the national level as well. So I can tell you it's at least $200 per ton of CO2. What feeds into that? Sea level rise impacts, wildfire impacts, and so on. A massive part of that calculation. But again, I don't have the specifics.
Okay. I'm a bad lawyer because I'm asking questions I didn't know the answer to already.
That's right.
I'm going to do it a second time on a different topic. You used the legal Latin term sucks before.
Yep.
I'll tell you what sucks for all of us, right, are the gas prices we're paying today.
Yes.
My understanding, from a perspective of why, when the gas is already underground, when there's an issue internationally in the Strait of Hormuz, whatever it might be, why the price immediately goes up. I think the average is it goes up like a rocket and falls like a feather.
Yes.
So we know all that money comes right out of our pockets, right?
Mhm.
The retailers are afraid because they very small margin. They gotta make sure they have enough money to buy the next tank that's gonna come in, right?
Mhm.
And the refiners, give or take, make a little bit more money than usual in the beginning, but they even out. At the end of the day, it's the oil companies, right, that are making the billions that are coming out of our pockets based upon those additional prices.
gwagner.com/scope or globalscope.io. We do this calculation. It turns out, yeah, there are several US oil companies who are currently making quite a bit more money because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Why? It doesn't cost anymore to pump the oil out of the ground, get it out of the ground in Texas or anywhere else in this country, or anywhere else globally for that matter. Oil prices are twice as high as they were, or almost twice as high. Now we are down to 90 or so again per barrel. Yeah, Saudi Aramco is making quite a bit of money, and so are the Exxons of the world, while the rest of us are paying more at the pump.
And quite a bit in the billions upon billions more.
That is fair to say, yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any other questions from senators? Mr. Wagner, we very much appreciate you coming here.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to hear from the absolute other side of the coin, NJBIA, Ray Cantor, who, as I understand it, one of the major concerns of BIA is an increase of the cost of gasoline at the pump. So we're going to do point and counterpoint. Ray, what do you have to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Ray Cantor of the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. I appreciate you putting me right after The Economist, but
Well, I wanted to give you a chance
I am undeterred. So I did send my testimony into this committee, so I will, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, at the beginning, I will try to be brief and concise, and at the risk of stepping beyond my area of expertise. I have concerns with testimony you just heard that there would not be any consumer impact. I have not seen the professor's specific testimony as it relates to New Jersey. I did see the letter that he did send into New York on their climate superfund law. And there are several things that maybe are not addressed. One, we're not talking about global markets right here. We are talking about the price at the pump. And there are multiple aspects, local aspects, that do affect the price at the pump. We know that taxes, for instance, or cleanup costs at a local facility can impact prices at the pump. So again, we're not at all talking about global markets. Obviously, that's not a concern here. I don't think the professor's analysis, at least as it was related to New York, took into the fact that it's not just New York, $75 billion, New Jersey, $50 billion, Vermont, who knows how many, and the 14 other states that may pass similar $50, $75 billion type of assessments. Are these all going to be just assumed by the shareholders? There'll be no impact on the operations of these companies. There'll be no indication or ability to pass those costs on. It's my understanding as well that the initial New York analysis was really an accounting analysis. What do you do with a retroactive liability? How do you put it on your books? Well, there's certainly when you put it on your books that it doesn't pass forward, but that does not necessarily mean that the business model of those companies do not see those as operating costs, especially in legislation like this, where those costs, presumably retroactive, the law says it's retroactive, but really this is a $2.5 million charge moving forward, each and every year. It also didn't take into account that these costs could be, legislation could come back 10 years from now. So this is not a retroactive liability only, it is an ongoing liability. We've already seen this in the New Jersey law that's been amended. I think it used to have a period to 22 or whatever. It's now up to 2025. So we're already adding years into this process. I don't think anyone would be shocked if 10 years from now the legislature came back and extended this period and extended the amounts of money. So I think there's a lot in that equation that was not accounted for. The BPU scenario, in all due respect, is not at all relevant to the case we have before us. Here in BP, it was one company, a one-time event, an environmental liability. In this case, we're trying to impose charges against about 80% of the market. And again, this is going to be a multiple state type of scenario. And to the extent that I am completely wrong, and it sucks to be a shareholder, and that's the analysis that we're going for, I will remind you that 47% of all fossil fuel companies are owned by pension funds, 401ks. So when your 401k goes down, mine goes down, yeah, I may not be paying at the pump, I'm paying it in my 401k. So let's not ignore that either. Two additional points, Mr. Chairman, I want to mention. The impact on jobs. New Jersey is fortunate to have two refineries in New Jersey. We have Phillips 66 over in Linden, and we have PBF down in Paulsboro. We used to have more refineries. As recently as 20 years ago, we had 6 refineries in New Jersey. 4 of them have already closed down, and we had more even years back. So do not think that I know we took out the word refinery from this bill, but they're going to be impacted. And the legislature is sending a strong message, as we heard from the Assembly Environment Committee last week, when the word was, good, these jobs should go. We don't want those jobs to go. Those 2 refineries in New Jersey support about 35,000 jobs, good paying jobs in the state. And those jobs, each and every one of them have families behind them, they have communities behind them. So we should not be nonchalant, in what this may be doing to those facilities and to jobs in New Jersey. And finally, I just want to mention the message this is sending to the business community in New Jersey. We've already seen major companies leave New Jersey. We had a major company, technology company leave last week. ExxonMobil changed its headquarters down to Texas. And the list goes on and on and on. I'd be happy to share a list of how many companies, Fortune 500 companies, have left the state. And they've left the state because the business climate in New Jersey is hostile to New Jersey, and it has been for the last several decades. These companies have been providing not only a legal product, it's an essential product. We all drove here today. All our materials that we wear, that we have in our phones, are all the result of fossil fuels. So we cannot just, ignore that reality. We're talking about a business, industry that is providing a legal and essential product to the people of New Jersey. And we are saying, because you've done that, and you've followed state policies have encouraged, national policies have encouraged the sale of fossil fuels to New Jersey. We're saying to these companies, we don't care if you follow the law, we don't care if it's essential, we don't care if it's needed. By the way, and those fossil fuel companies, the extractors who are listed in this bill, are the ones who are burning the product. You and I are burning it every single day, but we're not in here. We're ignored in here. So again, we're really concerned about the message that's being sent to the business community. Who's going to want to do business in New Jersey when you can do everything right and still be hit with a $50 billion price tag at the end of the day? So, Mr. Chairman, we strongly oppose this legislation. We do think it's going to have an impact on consumers, definitely on shareholders. We're concerned about the jobs in New Jersey, and we are concerned about the message it's sending to the business community. We ask that this bill not be released. We thank you very much for the opportunity to testify here today.
Thank you, Ray. Any questions for Mr. Cantor?
Save it for final comments. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cantor. Next, Curtis Fisher. In favor, and he's representing Momentum Strategies.
All right, thank you so much, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Curtis Fisher. I'm the owner of Momentum Strategy Partners, and don't often do this, but some members don't know. Been around Trenton since 1993, and my former jobs have included being a policy analyst for a number of governors in the state of New Jersey, reviewing a range of different issues, including the environment. And I've had the opportunity to work on this bill and wanted to make some important points. Happy to answer any questions. I wanted to start out by saying that, as Garnot was mentioning, if there's a finite cost, someone's going to pay. And right now, in New Jersey, it is taxpayers, ratepayers, and I can create a list of consumers and sewer utility customers and toll customers every day, because we know, based on sound science, which I'm going to be submitting to the record today, a study by Professor Justin Mankin, one of the world's leading climate attribution scientists, that just 5 companies have caused over $108 billion of loss in GDP to New Jersey from 1991 to, I'll get to the exact number in a second, but to, I think it's 2020. That number, in terms of loss of GDP, affects us all. It affects jobs, and it's been occurring because of extreme heat alone. That doesn't include the calculations associated with flooding. So that testimony has been submitted to all the members today from Professor Mankin. So we have these enormous costs, and we know, based on projections, they're going to continue. So someone's going to continue to pay. And I would mention that the state budgets that have been passed year after year have maintained those costs being paid by taxpayers, as well as local government in terms of property taxes for those GDP losses. So we're all paying a lot in terms of consumers and ratepayers and taxpayers. 82 companies that have emitted more than 1 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions are not paying into the costs of climate change. And what this bill simply does is require that those 82 companies, for past emissions, one thing that Ray said is just not accurate on the bill. The bill is retroactive. It has a specific period of time to calculate who's covered by the act, and that's in the act, and it ends in 2024. So those costs are here. They're currently being paid, and to be direct, which is hard for both Democrats and Republicans, is that every time a state budget is being passed, you're voting to continue charging taxpayers and perpetuating the system. Ratepayers being the example. Energy prices are a big headline today. But to their credit, in some cases, PSE&G has spent tens of billions of dollars alone to improve the resiliency of the grid. We know, based on climate attribution science, that the increase of costs are attributable to those greenhouse emissions. So Rutgers did a study of Superstorm Sandy, and they demonstrated that substantial costs were due directly to climate change. I think it was 15 to 18% in that study. So the point being is that we have a silent cost that is causing New Jersey to be unaffordable, that's built into the system, and unless we pass this bill, it's going to continue. And I'm proud to stand in support of that bill to make sure that we shift those costs. The other thing I just want to mention, some of the issues that the business industry community seems to not want to focus on, that no covered company. I've worked, like I mentioned, in Trenton since 1993. I've worked to pass the strongest predatory lending bills in the country, do not calls. I've never had an experience where a company that's covered has not testified. No covered company has testified on this bill opposed to the bill. And it really does, it should cause you great concern and pause, because it's a matter of respect in terms of, if there is a concern. What we have seen is surrogates, whether it's the New Jersey Business and Industry Association or others, speak to the way things could be if 100% of the assessment is passed on. They speak as if that's the case. We just heard from a respected economist it's not. But how about the CEO of Chevron? I want to be absolutely clear. We do not control the market price of crude oil or natural gas, nor of refined products like gasoline or diesel fuel. That's the CEO of Chevron. When, interestingly, he was threatened with a subpoena, and they had big oil executives have to testify in front of Congress. the CEO of Exxon said, the market establishes the price based on available supply and demand for that supply. The fact is, what Gernot said is the thing everybody knows. That's why the covered companies are not here today, because some members might ask them, what does cause gas prices to increase? Another chart, the U.S. Energy Information Agency shows how, of course, the price at the pump directly follows and tracks crude oil prices. The idea that a testimony was just given that, quote, the global market doesn't matter, that's really strange, because I think everyone, as Senator McKeon was pointing out, is paying an enormous amount of money at the pump because of what's happening globally. It does matter to this bill, because that's the underlying reality. And I want to say, having worked with Republicans and Democrats since 1993 on a range of different bipartisan pieces of legislation, that this bill is, in terms of providing a real common sense solution, that Tom Kean for 8 years, Governor Whitman for 8 years, and Chris Christie implemented, which is that if you make a mess, you should clean it up, in proportionality. That the cost, I happen to have an electric vehicle, but people drive gas cars all the time. The fact is, that doesn't mean that we have the same responsibility for a cleanup, like under our Spill and Compensation Act, to pay for those costs. It's only appropriate for the state legislature to say proportionally, the companies that cause the most damage should pay the most. I would expect that if you went back to speak with your voters, that they would feel that it's only fair that big oil pays. They're going to unfortunately continue to pay, and as Gernot pointed out, there's a range of different expenses when households flood that people pay, right? Households was his definition. Taxpayers are paying. It's only fair that we make sure that polluters pay into that. And so I just mentioned the U.S. Energy Information Agency, regardless of Democrat or Republican administration, points out that taxes, distribution to market, refinery, and crude oil, of course, are the major ingredients for what are the prices at the pump. These are simple facts, but like I said, it seems like there's an effort to obfuscate basic fact. Just a couple quick points I just want to make. The amicus brief filed by a Nobel Prize winner and the former chief of the World Bank, economists, all make clear, just as Gernot did, that this will not increase prices or, importantly, affect energy, as our energy concerns and supply is an issue. The idea that the $65 billion somehow from that BP paid doesn't apply here, we all have SEC, the companies have SEC filings, annual reports, and the general accepted accounting principles that govern how they behave. And this is a past action. So when BP had a spill, they were able to put it on their books as a past expense. It's not a forward cost moving forward. They book it, and they actually get a tax deduction. So just to note, taxpayers don't always get off the hook, as we know we often pay. They actually got a big tax deduction because it was a write-off. There is a possibility to note that this bill, companies will, again, they don't want to testify to admit this, but they potentially would qualify because it was a past liability. So the BP oil is a perfect example because $65 billion was covered by one company. This bill is only for 50. The idea that just because, as Ray pointed out, that other states may pass this bill, it somehow changes that dynamic is fundamentally false, because the market is still going to be the market. Oil companies produce product not knowing what the price, when the oil comes out of the ground, it's going to be worth. They're price takers. And I just want to be respectful to the members of the legislature that this bill is different than almost every other bill that you've ever dealt with, because it deals with a market of companies that when they say, oh, you're adding all this burden onto companies. The fact is that they're price takers. They're not like the normal business in New Jersey. But the normal business, even the biggest employers of New Jersey, are paying for climate costs. The idea that some people would like to say they're speaking for business, the fact is that 1.1 million businesses have been paying those billions of dollars into to cover the cost that big oil should be paying. They've been paying, and they're going to continue to pay. So the idea that our business climate, which I think all of us want our families to thrive and be supported, that somehow this bill is anti-business is the exact opposite. This bill is pro-business because it reduces the burden, not just for taxes, it reduces the burden for rates and all the other things that every mom and pop understand. They're paying insurance. We haven't even gotten, and we don't have time to testify to the reality that insurance and homeowners and property insurance for businesses is going up. I just want to make, just as a point of, like I said, I know I'm going on, but Exxon paid $225 million in 2015. Governor Christie had the largest settlement at the time for NRD. There is no evidence that that charge by a Republican governor resulted in any price increase. And I think the accountability that we've had multiple administrations advancing the Spill and Compensation Act, which is a retroactive and strict liability provision, just like this bill, is that this bill deserves and is appropriate for bipartisan support, and so that we can provide relief for taxpayers. And you know, a lot of legal issues didn't come up, which I happen to have the, you know, would love to, if you have any questions, but I'm going to skip it. Just who is not covered? The idea that there's been an accusation that refineries, and mentioned the economic impact, they are not covered by this act. So they do have an economic, there's no doubt they have an economic impact. I don't think anybody would dispute that. Refineries are not covered because we just built the reality that prices are not going to be passed on. Refineries are not going to be impacted by this bill. And I just think it's important to note that utilities and no major employer in New Jersey that I know of is covered by this bill. And so I'm going to stop there. Happy to answer any questions, but I know I went on, so
Well, it's okay.
we have important other people that
Very
need to
important
testify.
So, you had some numbers that you cited. One was $108 billion that have already, damages that have already accrued from
Yep.
global climate change. And again, we're laying it at the feet of the oil companies. I think you have a statistic that they were responsible for 3/4 of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Thought I saw that in some of your materials. But in any case, where did the $108 billion come from? And then secondly, what's on the horizon for damages from global climate change to come? If you know.
Yeah, I would just say there's written testimony from Professor Mankin that I will definitely make available to the committee. And Justin Mankin said he would be available to answer any questions. So he is the leading global expert on climate attribution, and he has broken down global numbers to national numbers to state numbers. So I defer to him. And the second question was regarding...
What's in our future?
Yeah,
I thought
so-
I saw a number concerning the number of schools that are currently in floodplains, the number of police departments, fire departments, municipal buildings, if you just wanted to make it keeping the government running in the event of
Right.
a
So
climate disaster.
state agencies, I mean, you can be very practical about this in terms of jobs and you know, what's in the pipeline. State agencies have identified, I think it's something to the neighborhood of $25 billion worth of projects that are just in the queue that they're recommending move forward. There's not a funding support for those projects. So the DOT issued a climate resiliency plan. They've identified a range of projects across the state. The Army Corps of Engineers, I would just mention, which is somewhat controversial, has done two major studies, which obviously most people think the Army Corps is very respected, and they've noted that there's tens of billions of dollars in projects and need just to deal with the immediate cost of climate change. There's additional studies which show the risk of buildings in flood zones, as you're mentioning, conducted by the DEP, that if you add those up, it's clearly hundreds of billions of dollars in potential costs. So the determination in legislative findings that $50 billion is a fair share. We're not, of course, having big oil pay for all the costs. $50 billion is a percentage, a small percentage of what is likely. Like I said, there's projects that you can, I have an Excel spreadsheet if anyone wants to see it, of all the projects lined up and the costs. Just for our shore John McKeon raised it before, the Army Corps said there's 7.6 billion in critical, to lift up critical schools and facilities,
And they're talking
all the police, all the fire buildings that
These
are
are
in.
hardening projects, right?
Those are,
Things
the
hardening.
7.6 is what the Army Corps proposed from South Monmouth down to Cape May in very important priority projects that need to get addressed. They also proposed a seawall, which was somewhat controversial for tens of billions of dollars in both northern Jersey and southern Jersey.
Questions? Okay. Curtis, thank you. And
Thank you
please,
so much.
please send that economic data.
Yes.
I'd like to see where the damages were assessed, that have already occurred, and also what hardening is needed.
Yeah, you mentioned, I mean, when the study by Mangan is on GDP, right? So those are the loss of job and productivity for extreme heat only. The $108 billion figure is extreme heat only. So every day a worker has to stay out because of how hot it is in New Jersey, and we know that extreme heat is being caused by climate change. Those are costs that are calculated to impact our GDP.
Thank you. All right, let's go in the other direction. Opposition. Hillary Chevron from South Jersey Chamber of Commerce. Opposed.
Still morning. Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. Hillary Chevra, I am the Director of Government Affairs for the Chamber of Commerce, Southern New Jersey. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to testify today. You did hear from my colleague Ray at BIA, and listening to your directions, I will try not to repeat anything that he said. So I want to note that our major concerns with this legislation is the retroactive liability framework. As Ray mentioned, these activities were regulated, legal, and necessary. We have a strategic oil reserve. As Ray mentioned, many products are made from the oil that is extracted by the folks who are going to be impacted by this bill. It's not just, the fossil fuels. There's a lot of things that use that product. So to go back and say that this necessary activity is now going to be penalized, we have grave concerns with that and what that says for the entire business community. We, appreciate and we look forward to continuing to work with you to advance climate resiliency goals, but through forward-looking strategies and not things that will penalize, again, regulated and legal activity. So just wanted to note that, and I know that refineries were removed from this bill, but we are concerned about the downstream impact that it will have on refineries. There is a refinery in South Jersey that is a major employer in one of the more disadvantaged counties in the state. These jobs are incredibly important and family-sustaining jobs, and the impact of anything that negatively impacts the refinery will have a huge economic impact on the entire region. So thank you again. I hope I didn't repeat anything, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your comments. Calandria Ortiz Resende from the League of Women Voters of New Jersey, in favor.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Chairman Smith, to testify today. My name is Calandria Ortiz Resende, and I am the policy analyst at the League of Women Voters of New Jersey. The League of Women Voters of New Jersey for policies of good government, transparency, accountability, and this is what this bill is about. Climate change is already here, imposing a lot of cost in our communities, in the people that you serve, your constituents. So it's time that those companies that pollute the most do their part to offset those costs. Many of the critics of this bill mentioned that the full company are innocent, but we know that they know these consequences were happened back in the 70s and in the 80s. So I want to share a little a story. Give me 1 second. In 1981, Lara Shawn won her 7th grade science fair in Cranford, New Jersey for her project on greenhouse effect. How did she know how much about it? Because her dad told her. How did her dad know so much about it? Because about the effect of greenhouse effect, because her father was Henry Shaw, the research scientist leader at Edison Research, and this was back in 1987. So by early 1980, Edison developed internal carbon research and modeling that closely predicted the warning we are experiencing today. So they knew what will happen, and they know what is going to continue happen. So right now we have to focus, and I want all of you to focus on what is affecting your tax, the people that your constituents, the taxpayer, and the town that you serve. Those are the ones that are paying the high costs and the high taxes. Another thing is those are the people that are represented in your community. They are not stakeholders. So let's be clear to who we're going to be supporting with this legislation. So thank you so much, and I please ask you to release this here today.
Thank you for your comments. Eric? Now, let's save the applause for the ultimate decision, which will hopefully be the correct one. We're just losing time. Eric Dobson, United Black Agenda. Mr. Dobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator McCain, for sponsoring this bill. I will not repeat anything else that was said up here today, other than the expert. I've had my share of colonoscopies, and things will help too. I don't have expertise in the numbers and all that stuff, but what I do have is I was here touring all the ravages and damages of Superstorm Sandy when it happened. And I'm not here to talk about statistics and numbers. I'm talking about the people who are impacted by it. Recently, in Plainfield, there was a loss of life. A friend of mine lost a loved one there. And I got to tell you, standing in these homes during Superstorm Sandy, the loss of memorabilia, the loss of pictures, the loss of family heirlooms, memories of generations that all swept away by climate change. And seeing these families desperate, trying to get help, crying because they've lost so much. And can you imagine all your belongings, your kids' pictures, your family's history being gone in 1 second? What that does to you emotionally, what that does to you financially. And so we've been dealing with climate change for a long time. And we will continue to deal with it because I'm convinced, and I'm quite sure you all know, that big oil company is not going to change. They're going to do anything about it. But you have an opportunity to make sure that what they're doing as they continue to damage the earth, pay for their damage. And I think this is not an issue of a partisan issue. This is an issue of humanity. We all are suffering. We're all paying the cost, high energy costs because of climate change, and we see it. And I don't know if you all have any family members that was impacted by Superstorm Sandy, but if you do, we forget sometimes. Sometimes we forget how bad that storm was and how bad it damaged New Jersey and the cost to clean up that stuff. So we keep paying the cost while these other companies get away with it. It's just like, I don't know if you guys got kids. It's all, I have grandkids now, but when my kids were younger, they would always bring their friends over. And there was always this one kid that, there's always one of your one kid friends that kids come over and they start doing stuff in your house and messing up stuff and damaging stuff. And it's like you keep inviting this kid over, at some point I'm going to have to talk to the parents. They're going to have to pay for this to keep putting damage in my home. And so it's kind of sort of the same thing here. At some point, the big oil parents is going to have to pay for the damage that they're doing to our society, that they're doing to our country, that they're doing to the globe, And I'm gonna close on this. This is something that should be a no-brainer. Right now, we are paying the cost for higher energy because of this, what's happening in this world. And I think it's time for us to stop paying the high cost and let those who are responsible for it. And we tell our kids to always be responsible for what you do. This is the way of you guys are holding people responsible for what they're doing. So thank you for your time. Thank you, Senator McCann, for all your work on this. Thank you, Chairman, for all your work on this bill. We need to get this bill passed. Thank you.
City 18 clause. In opposition, Zachary Dorn from Jersey First.
Morning, Senator. I'm going to keep this really brief. My name is Zachary Dorr. I'm the Advocacy Director for Jersey First. We're a nonprofit advocacy org. We work to make New Jersey a better place to live, learn, work, and retire. I'm here advocating on behalf of the 32,000 New Jerseyans that support us in our organization. I myself am Gen Z, 25, born and raised in New Jersey. And Chairman, you asked to take a different perspective, and I think this is my perspective on that. Last summer, I spent 4 months talking to about 11,000 people across the entire state of New Jersey door knocking. They were really concerned about one thing: affordability. And I think both sides ran on that issue this past year. Both sides won on those issues in their respective areas. And certainly, every single voter, our constituents that you guys serve, are concerned about that. And I ask that you oppose this bill because of the possibility of it affecting New Jerseyans and our affordability here in the state of New Jersey. We are really concerned about our affordability. I mean, growing up here, most people on our generation leave at the same rate that 65 plus leave in New Jersey right now. We can't afford to buy homes. We can't afford to even pay for our gas at this point. And so I know my colleagues spoke about retroactive fairness on businesses. We need to have businesses here to be able to have jobs, to be able to afford to live here in the state of New Jersey. And so we ask that you oppose this bill mainly so that we can, as an ability, to have our American dream. Firmly believe that New Jersey is the melting pot of America, as you can tell by this room today. And I firmly believe that our American dream is being threatened by some of these different legislation that's being proposed in here today. I am going to leave it real brief. I'm going to leave it as a colleague of mine said on the assembly side. Money, like water, runs downhill, and in New Jersey, it runs straight into the ratepayers' basements. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Adrian Orozco from the SEIU 32BJ. I'm not sure what the 32BJ is.
Chairman, he did have to testify in another committee. I don't know if there's a way to call.
I'll keep him in the list.
Thank you.
Hopefully he'll come back. All right. In favor, X Braithwaite, Ironbound Community Corporation. Morning.
Just give me 1 second. I don't need to give them more, as you can see. Good morning. My name is X Braithwaite, and I am the lead environmental justice organizer for the Ironbound Community Corporation, lifetime Newark resident, and also a resident of the Ironbound. I am here in strong support of the Climate Superfund Act. In the Ironbound, we are home to over 50,000 residents, packed into just a few square miles. We live next to the largest incinerator in New Jersey. We live alongside a major trucking corridor that moves goods through one of the busiest ports on the East Coast. We also live next to 3 fossil fuel power plants. And then people ask why 1 in 4 kids in Newark have asthma. 1 in 4. It's because in most communities, asthma is a health condition. In Newark, it's become a way of life. Children grow up carrying inhalers the same way as they carry backpacks. Parents know where the nearest emergency room is more than they know where the nearest park is. My little brother is growing up in that reality. Thousands of Newark residents are growing up in that reality. And climate change is making everything worse. When storms hit, the lower Passaic River floods, and then toxic water backs up into our streets and our neighborhoods. Residents worry about what's in the water, what's in the air, and whether their homes will be safe after a major storm. So let's be clear. Environmental justice communities did not create this crisis. Immigrant communities did not create this crisis. And working families certainly did not create this crisis. The people living next to incinerators, highways, ports, and power plants did not create this, yet we are paying for it every single day with our health, our homes, and our futures. The Climate Superfund Act is built on the principle that every New Jersey resident understands if you make the mess, you have to clean it up. For decades, fossil fuel corporations knew their products were driving climate change. They made enormous profits while communities like mine absorbed the consequences. Now it's time for those corporations, not taxpayers, to help pay for the damage. We've paid with cancer. We've paid through flooded homes, extreme heat, missed school days, emergency room visits, and years taken off of our residents' lives. The Climate Superfund Act gives New Jersey the opportunity to make a simple statement, right? The communities that have suffered the most from pollution and climate impacts should be the first in line for solutions, not last. For generations, communities like North and North's Ironbound have been treated as sacrifice zones. So today I'm asking you to send a different message, pass the Climate Superfund Act, and let's finally invest in the people who've been carrying the most of the burden. And I just want to say one thing I forgot to show you. So this is a class picture of my little brother, and as you can see, they're all black and brown students. 1 in 4 of them have asthma. 3 of them have asthma, and all of them know somebody who has asthma. These are the kind of health effects that we're talking about having Superfund sites pay for when it comes to being able to repair the harms that have been done to communities of color. Thank you.
Again, please save the applause. For the record, Bill Caruso from the American Petroleum Institute proposed that we testify. Also in opposition, Tony Russo, CIANJ. Tony, are you here?
I think he's also down in another committee, so.
All right, I'll keep him in the list. Mike Capone from PBF Energy in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michael Capone. I'm the general manager of Paulsboro Refining. It is? Good. I see red. General manager of the Paulsboro Refining Company. I'm also a near lifelong resident of the state of New Jersey. I'd like to talk to you about my concerns about this bill from both perspectives. As general manager of the Paulsboro Refinery, I need to be concerned about the viability of the refinery. I've heard it said, in fact it was said by one of the witnesses earlier, that refineries have been exempted. I'll point out that the bill as introduced specifically included, the Senate version of the bill as introduced specifically included petroleum refining. And if you are going to amend that to adopt the assembly version, there's language in there that refers to trade. We obviously trade in crude oil because that's our feedstock.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Caputo, I don't know what version you're looking at or like, but I tell you unequivocally that the final version that will be hopefully released and put on the governor's desk will make it, if we have to do it in crayon or blood, that refineries are not impacted by that. I thought the versions that were at, and then you're welcome to testify as you want, of course, but I want to assure you that commitment is there, and I thought we had gotten the nomenclature correct after it was released from budget the last time. I promise you that. Tell me that.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you putting it on record, because that is my number one concern. I do want to just address a couple of things. Some of the things that have been said earlier. Refiners are price takers. That is a true statement, and that is why I am concerned, because I cannot pass on costs if it were to apply to me. I cannot pass those costs on. So those costs are going to come out of what otherwise would have been capital available to reinvest into the refinery. And if I don't have those funds, the refinery doesn't have the ability to maintain its competitiveness. And if it cannot maintain its competitiveness, it'll close, just like the Port Reading refinery did where I used to work. Just like I appreciate what is said.
And that's because Verzicelli said I had to or he'd kill me. So,
I appreciate hearing that too, because I was a little worried about John. But I just do want to end with this point. It will affect consumers. Where the global model is wrong is if you lose your local suppliers, that supply will come, right? That supply will come, but it's got to come from further away. There are increased costs, transportation and handling that don't exist today. That will net result in higher costs to the New Jersey consumer. Thank you.
Okay. Mylena Bimpong, New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, in favor?
by the way, Mr. Chairman, there's a senator in Linden as well that is kind of said we better look out for refineries, just to make it clear.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah?
Good afternoon. My name is Mylena Bimpong with the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, the statewide political voice of the environment. We strongly support this bill, S2338. New Jersey is warming at a faster rate than the rest of the country. Not only is our sea level rising, but due to tectonic activity, New Jersey is sinking. That means our flooding will only get worse. The oil and gas industry knew about the connection between burning fossil fuels and climate change a decade before we first put a man on the moon. In 1968, the oil industry internal and commission reports already were using statements like significant temperature changes are almost certain to occur by the year 2000, and there seemed to be no doubt that the damage to our environment could be severe. Despite this, the industry continued to lead a documented and widespread disinformation campaign about the anthropogenic climate change in order to protect their own profits, and decades later, we are paying the cost. According to data from the NOAA, National Centers for Environmental Information, between 1980 and 2024, there were 74 confirmed weather and climate disaster events with losses exceeding $1 billion each that affected New Jersey, including droughts, flooding, freezing, severe storms, and tropical cyclones. That also resulted in the deaths of hundreds of people across the region. Someone has to pay those actual costs for infrastructure, damage removal, rebuilding, and more. In the next few years, the federal outlook for investment in government programs does not look good, to say the least. Recent actions at the federal level have shown us that New Jersey is not getting federal funding to address climate disasters. It is up to New Jersey to step up and identify how we will fund our resiliency in the future. We urge you to vote yes on the Climate Superfund Act and hold accountable the industries that knowingly put us, our public health, and our climate at risk. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Dennis Hart, Deputy Councilman, New Jersey. Opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again. Dennis Hart, Chemistry Council of New Jersey. Our member companies, chemical manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, refineries, personal care products, flavors and fragrances. Every one of those companies produce products for the public. Every one of those products has ingredients that has its basis in fossil fuels. As we've seen from the Straits of Hormuz right now, there's an extreme shortage for fertilizers. Everything begins with fossil fuels in this occurrence. Curtis Fisher talked about driving here in his electric vehicle. Without the high-strength, lightweight plastics that go into manufacturing electric cars, we wouldn't have electric cars. I want to begin by thanking Senator McKeon. Your outright statement that this bill will not affect the refineries in New Jersey is great to hear. But we still have tremendous problems with this bill, and we are opposed to this bill. I don't know the professor that testified earlier, and I have all respect for him, but his testimony reminded me of the Seinfeld episode, The Write-Off, in which Kramer breaks Jerry's stereo, and he tries to convince Newman to blame the post office so he can get a write-off. And Jerry goes, "What's a write-off?" He goes, "I don't know, what's a write-off?" He goes, "Well, what's that mean?" "Well, that means the post office will pay for it. It's a write-off, so nobody gets hurt." Somehow, there's $50 billion that's not going to cost anybody anything. And I just don't see that happening, that you're going to charge an industry $50 billion and it's not going to show up somewheres, whether it's in our products. You know, we keep focusing on the price of gas, and I'm not mentioning the price of gas. That's only a minor thing. But the professor, with no pun intended, there was a lot of red herrings in the testimony. The discussions about the BP oil spill, that was an oil spill. My understanding is they paid a tremendous amount of penalties and did a lot of natural resource damage work for the years it took to deal with that spill. But that was an oil spill. And we're trying to make it seem like we're penalizing companies for oil spills. This bill penalizes companies for providing legal products through the permitted extraction of fossil fuels from wherever they were extracted, legally, to provide legal products to the public to be penalized for that. And that's the first time I've ever remembered this type of legislation happening like this.
How about the tobacco settlement?
Senator, the tobacco settlement, we don't have a strategic cigarette supply in this country. We have a strategic oil
But we
reserve.
have lots of companies that manufacture cigarettes who knew early in the game that cigarettes cause cancer, would not take any responsibility, and in fact claimed the opposite. And they were charged retroactively for the damage they did to American citizens.
I believe,
That's what the principle is here.
I believe, Senator,
Stop with the clapping already.
you made one. I believe that was from litigation. I think that was from.
And this
I
is
think
in
that-
litigation too.
Yes,
Find it.
litigation that is going to cost the state a tremendous amount of money to defend this if it goes through, but not through legislation. Something like this is not a normal legislative thing. The opioid settlements were not through legislation. That was all through class action litigation, as I understand it. And litigation is happening in other states, and I think New Jersey should, instead of having the AG's office hire attorneys.
Some clarification again. The state of New Jersey will only receive this money, not because we passed the bill, but because we set up a trust fund to receive it and dispense it. That's basically what's happening here. If the litigation is not successful, the U.S. Supreme Court, fair and just, comes to the conclusion that this should be approved. Only then is New Jersey going to be receiving that money. It's going to be through litigation. I mean, at the end of the day, we don't have the ability to do what you think we're doing. It's going to be the courts ultimately to make the decision.
I think, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, this sends a very bad signal to the business community looking
The
to
signal is
invest.
be responsible. Stop killing people. Do the right thing. That's a responsible signal.
Mr. Chairman, this is for past activities. The funding is for.
And again, and the second time I heard this, it is not for past activities. It doesn't go back to the 1800s or 1925 or the 70s or 80s. It starts in 1998 when all science and mainstream science recognized the link between release of carbon into the atmosphere and climate change. So it's not as if it wasn't put at a point in time when the fossil fuel companies knew. And so different.
Yes, Senator, and I'm not disputing the climate change at all. I think climate change is absolutely real. That's what I'm talking about is going and setting up a brand new program to go after people for providing legal products at that time. That's the extent of it.
By the way, sorry to be so intense about it, but we do feel strongly
Well,
about it.
absolutely. This is a big
You know,
issue.
we know you 100 million years, you try to be as responsible as you can, but at the end of the day, this is money in the pockets of the corporation. That's where it's going to come out of. It's not going to be landing on the people in the economy with higher prices. Pollution should pay for the damages.
And I'm not disputing polluter pays principle. I spent most of my career pursuing that. What I
You were in the
dispute-
DEP,
Yeah.
and then you went to the dark side. Sorry.
I'm not your father, Lou. What I want to say, Mr. Chairman, is I should probably
Darth
stop,
Vader
but-
saved us all.
There you go. There's 7 more episodes, I guess. But however, we do need to look at the impact of this. Its money is going to come from somewhere, and the message to the business community is you're providing at the time, and still is, a legal product that the people want. I mean, last December, Governor Murphy issued an executive order about an impending propane shortage to make sure that the public was going to be able to get the propane for industry, for heating and cooking. This is a product that we still absolutely need. So the thought of penalizing people for providing a product that we need is still something I grapple with, sir.
Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it. Mike Skelly, Unitarian Universalist. That's what you mean. First time I see Unitarian Universalist. Faith in action. In favor. Mike, are you here? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak today. I am the chair of our Unitarian Universalist Faith Action Environmental Justice Task Force, and I speak in strong support of Bill S. 2330. It will require polluters to pay and remediate environmental harms and to fund affordability measures for communities bearing the greatest burdens. Our faith calls on us to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person and to practice justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. When heat, flooding, polluted air, water, and soil place the heaviest burdens on low-income communities and on communities of color, these core values are being violated. Requiring polluters to pay is a moral, practical, and spiritual necessity. It holds accountable those who have profited from harm. It directs resources to repair the health, economic damage, and it advances the equitable future for the people of New Jersey and that our congregations throughout the state of New Jersey seek for all our residents and our natural systems. This bill centers on the needs of the most impacted. It invests on community-based solutions. It shifts costs away from families who can least afford these burdens. For these reasons, Unitarian Universalist Faith Action of New Jersey strongly urges a favorable vote on today's bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Eric Lindgren, New Jersey Energy Something Group. Can't tell us. What is the actual title?
It's the New Jersey Energy Marketers Group, which was formerly the New Jersey Gas and Convenience Store Association. We just changed the name a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
But yeah, so we are concerned. I have more lengthy testimony that I submitted, so I'll just briefly summarize it. You know, we're concerned on behalf of the retail and distributors of motor fuel diesel in the state. You know, we saw President Trump's tariffs were passed on, even though they were higher up on the food chain. We've seen the motor fuel tax, the petroleum products gross receipts tax, formally assessed at the terminal level, yet passed on to the consumer. We've seen in California and Washington State that they've enacted cap and trade programs that have increased the cost of gasoline to the consumer. We don't know exactly how the DEP is going to come down on their attribution science. I went through a nonprofit group that's been cited by some of the sponsors to try and get a sense of what the potential impact could be, as well as the $50 billion number, which actually becomes close to $63 billion when you account for the CPI inflation over the next 20 years that's in the bill, as well as data about where we currently get our motor fuel in the state, the companies, and sort of spread it around to get maybe a rough idea of what the impact could be, especially because on a larger scale, as we said before, there are a lot of states that are looking at doing this too. It's not only going to be the state of New Jersey that would enact this if it's found constitutional. And for some companies like an Exxon or a BP, it's about 12 to 13 cents a gallon for the next 20 years. For other companies like a Shell or a Marathon that have fewer gallons to spread the cost around, it's more like 23 cents a gallon. And I would also note that some of these companies also sell their fuel as unbranded to places like Delta or et cetera, or other local gas stations. One other idea that occurred to me just I was sitting here today is that if you're a franchisee and most of the gas stations that have a major oil company brand associated with them are a franchisee, you're in a long-term agreement where you have to buy the branded fuel from the terminal at the price that these companies set. And so as I'm thinking about it, I'm worrying that when they put their magical little additives in it to make it Exxon gas or Shell branded gas, is that an area where they could seek to recoup the costs on either small businesses who would possibly have to pass it on to the public as well? I'm also concerned about the attribution aspects. You know, Bayway Refinery, as an example, is owned by Phillips 66, which is a company that does not engage in extraction, but they were only created in 2012 after they were spun off from the ConocoPhillips Corporation, which does engage in extraction. So could the DEP potentially say, you owe a portion of the damages from that 1995 to 2012 period? If they don't, could we see another company sue either the state or each other to try and recoup that damages? There's endless questions about the various mergers and various companies over the course of 30 years that I think the state would have to fight in court, which is a cost for the consumer. The other major problem, I think, with this legislation is that looking at who has done the emissions, only about 13% of the emissions are attributable to U.S. companies. If you expand it to Europe, Japan, and Canada, you're still only at 30% of emissions. And I'm not optimistic that the state of New Jersey is going to be able to extract $3.2 billion from Saudi Aramco, $1.9 billion from India's state-owned coal company, $700 million from the Iraq National Oil Company, to give just a handful of examples. Chinese, Russian, and Iranian companies, mostly owned by the government, account for fully 36% of emissions. So that could potentially drop the amount of money from $50 billion to $32 billion. Consider as an example the Russian company Lukoil, which is a horrible company, just for the record. They would owe about $560 million. There's about 120 gas stations in the state. They're run by franchisees, but the property is owned by Lukoil. The problem is the property is not really owned by the Lukoil. They're owned by Lukoil North America, which is not an extractor, which is an LLC based in Delaware, which is in turn owned by Lukoil International, which is an LLC based in Switzerland, which is owned by public joint stock company Lukoil, which is a company based in Russia, in Moscow, which has been sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury, which the U.S. Treasury is trying to force them to sell off all those assets. Would the people who wind up buying them wind up accidentally buying a share of damages, or would the state just forego that money because they can't get to the money? I don't even think they could take it because the company's been sanctioned. This is especially concerning given that the new addition to the bill create this new trust fund, which has the authority to issue bonds with a promise to pay interest up to $50 billion at a rate of $16 billion a year, even if the authority doesn't actually get revenue coming in, and the state is pledging itself that it will cover the cost of those bonds and their interest, even though, despite the attempts by the bill language, the Supreme Court has said pretty bindingly that any dedication in statute is automatically overridden by future budget processes. So future legislators could take some or all of the money that would come in from this fund and spend it however they would feel, but yet you've already sent out the bonds. We saw what happened with the Transportation Trust Fund, where it was abused. It now has $32.5 billion in debt service outstanding. The debt service on its bonds is $1.5 billion a year, even though it only generates about $2.1 billion in annual revenue. And I don't want to be repetitive to the people that came before, so I can finish there.
Appreciate your time. In favor, Tracy Stevens, Green Faith. Tracy Stevens, Green Faith. All right, let's get this note there, Howard.
Good afternoon, Senators. Thank you so much for posting this bill for a hearing today. I'm Tracy Stevens. I'm the New Jersey organizer for Green Faith, and I'm speaking on behalf of thousands of New Jersey people of faith who support this bill. I would like to present into the record today a letter of support signed by 238 faith leaders representing diverse religious traditions in every county in the state. With deep moral conviction and in the interest of protecting our families, neighbors, and communities, we strongly support this bill. I'd like to address some misconceptions that I heard in the Assembly hearing last week and again today. This bill is not about punishing fossil fuel companies. This is about corporate responsibility. All faith traditions, not to mention basic human decency, share the simple moral principle that if you cause harm, you're responsible for repairing the damage. This bill is about helping families, communities, and taxpayers who have been slammed by climate disaster costs and have shouldered all the costs. We're asking for the fossil fuel companies to be a good neighbor. And the other thing that has come up, most of us drive cars, so aren't we all responsible? This bill is exclusively targeting fossil fuel companies who emitted 1 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions since 1995. None of us individually is coming anywhere close to that. Again, it's about corporate responsibility. And just a reminder that the fossil fuel industry has spent decades and millions of dollars trying to shift public perception away from themselves and onto consumers. You all know the term carbon footprint, right? That was a marketing strategy from BP in 2004 to convince the public that we are responsible, not the corporate industry that is burning fossil fuels and causing this disaster. So, make polluters pay. People of faith are fully in support of this bill, and we look forward to working with you to pass it. And where should we put these letters? Should I give them to you? Over here? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Kevin Hagan, New Jersey Civil Justice Institute, in opposition. Kevin?
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, for the opportunity to speak today. Kevin Hagan, Princeton Public Affairs Group, on behalf of the New Jersey Civil Justice Institute and their president, Alyssa Frank. NJCI, for those who don't know, advocates for a fair, predictable, and efficient civil justice system that supports investment, job creation, and critically, affordability for New Jersey families and businesses. This bill seeks to impose retroactive, strict liability on a small group of New Jersey fossil fuel businesses for alleged damages caused by climate change, global climate change, including emissions that occurred decades ago and far beyond New Jersey's borders. This bill is likely preemptive of the federal law Congress enacted the Clean Air Act to create a comprehensive national framework for regulating greenhouse gas emissions. States do not have the authority to regulate out-of-state emissions or impose liability for global atmospheric conditions. This bill raises serious due process concerns. The bill retroactively penalizes businesses for activities that federal and state governments not only permitted but affirmatively encouraged for decades as a part of national energy policy. It imposes massive liability after the fact on a narrow subset of New Jersey companies, upend settled expectations, while ignoring the vast majority of global greenhouse emitters. The bill unduly burdens interstate commerce by imposing liability for lawful extraction of refining activities that occurred outside of New Jersey. The bill attempts to regulate conduct by the states beyond the state's borders in violation likely of the Commerce Clause. Greenhouse gas emissions are global by nature, and this bill improperly assigns responsibility for worldwide emissions to a handful of in-state businesses. That is why we are asking you as a committee to vote no on this bill, because it guarantees to embroil our courts in prolonged and costly litigation, diverting judicial resources and undermining the predictability of New Jersey's justice system. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. For the record, Catherine Hunt, in favor, no need to testify. Tony Russo for the second time, are you here, Tony?
He's in another committee, Chairman, so.
I don't need, I'm keeping it wide, but next time it's time. Wait. Let's see, do we just have a negative? So, for the record, Matthew Cryer, citizen, in favor, no need to testify. Nathan Carr, New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. In favor, no need to testify.
Sorry, I thought you were calling.
What's that?
I thought you were calling me. I'm sorry.
Who are you?
Matthew Cryer?
I did, I called you.
Okay, cool.
Come on up.
Hello, I'm Matthew Cryer. I'm a resident in the state. I've worked in agriculture for a couple of years now. And I feel like we've heard a lot today about like hypothetical damage that could happen to, profit margins if this went through. I want to talk about what I've seen as far as like damage I've seen with my own eyes. We're going into another year of drought right now and expected to continue drought. I'm not with the company that this happened with at the time, but 2 years ago we had a similar situation where we had a heat wave in March and lost a significant portion of the crop. It was ornamental trees, and ended up having to lay off a significant amount of people who worked there because the revenue wasn't there to pay them. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that these costs are paid by somebody. It's going to continue to get harder to farm in this state every year, whether that's because of heat and drought, or down in the south there's flooding and salt intrusion. And it's going to take a lot of work. There's technologies we have. There's irrigation technologies that are less labor intensive that's currently used. That's another problem, is we have more irrigation days, and those days overlapping with days that are too hot to work. So that puts the farmers in a pickle there. And I just wanted to stress the urgency that there is money put aside to continue to allow farming to exist in New Jersey. And I think that this legislation is a good way to do it. Rather than passing it on, it would cost everybody.
Thank you very much for your comments. Mike Egerton, opposed. New Jersey Chamber of Commerce. Mike, are you here?
I am here. Chairman Mike Leviton, Executive Vice President, New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce. The great thing about this process here is, we can come with differing opinions. We can agree to disagree. I have a great respect for Senator McKean. We go a long way back. My Economics 101 is a little different. In all the years that I've worked here, anytime there's some kind of cost, whether it's through implementation, whether it's through the potential of litigation, it does get passed on to our various members, the consumers. I mean, look, the analogy I used in the assembly last week was fairly straightforward. When minimum wage goes up, I asked my employers, how do you handle that? They said, well, we have a couple of choices. We can either not hire the employee we want to hire, we can pass the costs on to consumers, or we don't grow here in the state of New Jersey. You all saw the recent article about Samsung. These kinds of initiatives, without a doubt, send a chilling message. And then I asked, which I asked in Senate budget during lame duck when this bill was presented, what other sector is next? You're isolating one sector and putting the blame of climate change on them. And I would argue we're all to blame. Look at the pie chart that I've seen over the years at DEP. I remember where the industrial sector was, and it kept shrinking because our members were installing state-of-the-art equipment and reducing. A great portion of that we started attacking, as you know, Chairman, was mobile sources, mobile vehicles and everything. And then I asked, what's that other section of the pie chart? It's called non-point sources. That's all the individuals. What, are we going to start telling everybody that they have to ante up? They're much to blame as any company or any sector that you want to point at. Gas grills, fireplaces, weed whackers, so on and on and on. I just fear that where does this stop? I've seen initiatives. Oh, by the way, too, say you are successful, okay? Do you think I believe 1 minute that the money collected is going to go to an intended purpose of helping out with resiliency and strengthening, for climate resiliency? I've seen too many times, I think Eric mentioned, transportation trust fund dollars being reallocated. I've seen the unemployment insurance fund being raided, and then my members' payroll taxes went up. I've seen clean energy money being diverted. I don't believe for 1 second, even if you are successful, that this money will be allocated. It will go into the abyss called the general fund. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for your comments, Mike. Adrian Orozco, SEIU, are you here?
Right here.
Right. In favor?
Yes.
What's the SEIU 32BJ? What's the 32BJ?
So that's Service Employees International Union. 32BJ was founded about, well, two separate locals, B and J, 90 years ago, building and janitor, but there was a merger about 40 years ago.
So this is the name of the local?
Correct, yeah.
Thank you. And let me ask you, you stated did you give us a copy of the statement?
No.
Why don't you give us a copy of the statement and you tell us what you want here? It's almost a dinner hour. And we need, you're second to last, and everybody's been kind of helping move the process along. Can you do it without reading it?
I can keep it under 3 minutes. Or briefer, do you want? Or
Do 2.
2 minutes? Okay. Chairman Smith, members of the committee, thanks for the opportunity to speak on the Polluters Pay to Make New Jersey Affordable Act. Like I said, with SEIU 32BJ, we represent 15,000 property service workers, including janitors, security guards, airport workers, cafeteria workers, and just want to express that climate change, it's already impacting the health, safety, working conditions, and economic prospects of working families in New Jersey. Our members, many of whom are working class, immigrants, people of color, disproportionately live in areas affected by extreme weather events like Superstorm Sandy. And they're disproportionately impacted by the economic damages caused by climate change. From extreme flooding to extreme heat, those impacts have already imposed damages to the tune of $109 billion and projected to cost billions more in the decades ahead. And without action, working families are going to continue to shoulder those costs in the form of higher taxes, insurance premiums, utility bills. So this bill would shift those costs from working families to fossil fuel extractors. And New Jersey's critical infrastructure, roads, transit, water, schools, hospitals, aging increasingly and vulnerable to flooding and extreme heat. And so this bill would allocate $625 million annually to the NJDOT for resilient transportation and transit projects, and would raise a total of $50 billion with no taxpayer impact for critical investments in all sectors of our economy. We're also particularly excited to see the strong labor provisions in the Polluters Pay Act, like project labor agreements, labor harmony agreements, and prevailing wage provisions will ensure that the predicted 18,000 jobs created annually through the legislation will be unionized and well paid. So this bill will help our members and families not just survive in today's economy, but to truly thrive and build a better future for themselves and their children. So on behalf of SEIU 32BJ, we urge the committee to approve this bill and release it from committee and to join us in pushing for this legislation to be passed before the state budget is finalized. Because before lawmakers ask New Jersey working families to pay even more for the cost of climate change, polluters must pay first. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and your breath. Mike Estevez, Latino Action Network.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Michael Estevez, and I am here as volunteer on behalf of the Latino Action Network. I'm here to speak about what this bill means for Latino communities in New Jersey. The reality is, Latino New Jerseyans are bearing the full cost of pollution, and we didn't cause it. Perth Amboy, Jersey City, Newark, and Patterson, places where Latino families make up nearly half of the population, we have the highest rates of asthma, cancer, and heart disease. When Hurricane Ida hit, Sandy, they both caused insurance rates and property taxes to go up. Fossil fuel companies profited purely. The money that gets extracted from the fossil fuel companies, should this bill succeed, will go directly into funding infrastructure projects. Jobs that aren't directly tied to oil refineries, and supporting Latino communities in underprivileged areas. With disease, jobs, and livelihoods impacted, it's almost impossible to keep a living and hold a family in this state. Time is urgent. On behalf of the Latino Action Network, I urge you to vote yes on this bill.
Thank you for your comments and your brevity. The infamous Tony Russo has arrived in opposition. Brevity is the soul of wit.
Especially, yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm sorry I was down in Senate Commerce testifying, but thanks for the opportunity.
You're the more important.
I was here for 2 hours. But again,
Still the more
I think you're the most interesting committee.
For sure. Will you pass my bill there too, Tony?
I'm not sure. But anyway, I'll be brief because I know you heard a lot from my colleagues, but I'll start with just the premise of the title of the bill. And we have to get to a point where we stop disparaging our employers, because to me, polluter means something. I used to be a DEP permit writer. I used to write water permits. If you did not have a permit or you exceeded your permit, you are a polluter. But these are companies that operated in good faith. And if you look at the bill, they're going back 30 years to 1994, 32 years, and saying, the state of New Jersey, if this bill passes, is saying, now, you know what, despite the fact you operated in good faith under all those permits, we think now that you owe us X amount of dollars. And to me, it's at a point where, what message does that send to the rest of the business community? And if you don't know anything about the Commerce and Industry Association, we do represent businesses from every sector. And I can tell you, Mr. Chairman, that this bill is being watched by all sectors, right? And again, when you think about the retroactivity of this and the fact that now you're going to be assessing up to $50 billion, not a lot of clarity how you assign blame. Just to think about the paperwork, the litigation, the work that would be involved to try to get to that $50 billion. We just think there are better ways to do the things that you want to do with the bill. And you and I have had these conversations about natural resource damages, about how you have to start spending the money that's already been collected. We all get that flood mitigation is important, wetland restoration is important, but there's just better ways to do it than this bill. And I'll end on the fact that it's not the argument whether or not your gas prices are going to go up. I'm more concerned with whether or not there's going to be new investment in New Jersey. Because if you think about investment, it's like water. It'll follow a path of least resistance. And we are in budget month, and you will be working on the budget. If you think about the top 3 tax revenues, gross income tax is number 1, sales tax is number 2, corporate business tax number 3. We all know corporate business tax is off by 38%. One common denominator in all those taxes is private sector jobs. And what this bill is going to do, and trust me when I say I've heard from other sectors, they're watching what happens with this bill and how New Jersey treats employers, because the concern is going to be you're going to chase away those private sector jobs when we should all try to be growing that tax base. So respectfully, we oppose the bill, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for returning. We may not agree with your comments, but we appreciate everybody's comments. So our last witness, Consumer Energy Alliance, Bryson Hugh. Bryson Hall, in opposition. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, appreciate your time. Lots been said, so I'm going to keep it shorter and shorter. I represent Consumer Energy Alliance. We judge policies by 3 things. Are they affordable, reliable, cleaner energy? Is that going to provide that? I would say this is going to be a mistake here, because You're looking at a product, and I'd like to add on Mr. Russo's comments. If I spent 10 years overseas as a journalist for Reuters, if another country did this to said, we're going to take your profits that you made legally, and took it back, the ambassador would be standing, shouting from the housetops, where's the rule of law? Where's the due process? Where's the constitutionality of the legislature determining that it can make the judgment? And it's true that it was Medicaid settlements of big tobacco that got companies to come to the table and say, we're going to settle. You don't have that. You have 8 to 10 cases that have been thrown out, roughly 30 that are working through the courts, and I think you have a good briefing of the legal aspects of it. I'd also say the effect on energy, and I have the privilege of being able to read and study energy policies across the country. If you want to go the way of California and send a message, and I like to listen to, what's the saying? If you show me an incentive, I'll tell you the outcome. It works the same with disincentives. This is a massive disincentive to an employer. It says, hey, you did everything right, you followed, you did legal emissions, you sold a legal product that's absolutely intrinsic to the economy. In fact, if you look at history, and this is my little bit of economics, generally speaking, as GDP grows, emissions grow. That has started to diverge in this country over the last maybe 5 years, showing that we're getting better at keeping the pollution down. But the bigger point is, California's losing refineries. 2, I think, just left in the last year. Chevron moved out. You've already had Exxon move out of here. You're already on that path. If you want to keep going that way, do this. End up in court, not getting the outcome you want, and not doing a single thing to help the environment. So with that, I would say thank you very much for the time, and appreciate the brevity.
Thank you for coming in. 3 last entries, not to be witnesses. Adam Light, lead tag from CWA 1036. In favor, no need to testify. Bernadette Maher, M-A-H-E-R, as citizen. In favor, no need to testify. Linda Powell, representing the JFK Democratic Club in Franklin Township, and several other groups as well. In favor, no need to testify. We are done with the testimony. Senator McKeon, you said at the end you'd like to make some comments.
I'll hold them until I vote, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Is it appropriate, would you entertain a motion?
Motion to release. Second. Senator Greenstein. Let's take a roll call.
Motion to release a Senate committee substitute for S2338, Senator Tiber.
No.
Senator Space.
No.
Senator McKeon.
Yeah, and I promised to be brief. There was a young lady from the city of Newark. I just want to compliment you. You know, I think of Kim Geddes all the time. And she was before this committee, well, back when I was in the Senate, 20 years ago, and dealt with a lot of the same issues, and we hopefully were responsive. And to see such a young woman now in the place, it just gave me real good feelings. I'm glad that you're advocating, keep up the great work. In general, to all the advocates, and Curtis, you probably don't want me to put you out, but you've been working incredibly hard. And I really appreciate, as you do from all stakeholders, getting information. That's what you all do, regardless of what side you're on. You give us information and help us hone our arguments, better legislation, and I appreciate you all, and particularly yourself, Curtis, for the fine work you did. Dennis, I thought I was the only one who called you Darth Vader. I can't believe it. Was that just like gratuitous? Or
There's a law.
Yeah. And I appreciate, I appreciate where you're coming from. I mean, you represent the Chemistry Council, and this is, directly in the wheelhouse. I'm not sure where the chamber comes from, and particularly BIA. Last I looked, BIA, there's 1.1 million businesses here in the state of New Jersey. Each and every one of them plan or would greatly benefit by this legislation as it relates to the funds that it would produce to do the things that we're going to need to do anyway. So I just find that so interesting when maybe I don't know if any of those 82 companies are even a part of BIA in New Jersey, but I just think that's interesting, the vigor of that particular group. We should be standing behind this, truth be told. Look, guys, this isn't a matter, and I'm sorry my Republican colleagues voted already, and not that I thought that I persuade you in any way, shape, or form, I guess, but at least at the end of the day, we have to spend this money. We have to spend a lot more than this. We're going to be faced now with the reality that climate change is here, and now we're pivoting to resiliency to spend billions and billions and billions of dollars. It's a matter of who is that going to be? Is that going to be a scintilla, really, of the profit of the companies, big oil, who has, in an unprecedented way, have had our vast public lands, our coastal plain open to them, have had their competition literally put out of business as it relates to the renewables by the federal government, have been given billions and billions of tax breaks. Heck, we risked a war in Venezuela over oil. The president said it 14 times in his press conference. I just, you know, at the end of the day, this isn't vilifying those companies. It's asking them to contribute a fair share out of massive, record-breaking profits. And for those business people who said, well, who would ever come here? Who would come here if they're going to make billions and billions of dollars and then pay a little bit relative to the consequences of what it is they would do? Just about anyone. Now, as it relates to the refineries, whoever in that other committee said, let them go, we don't want them here anyway. I mean, come on. What a ignorant thing to say. Those are 30,000 plus important jobs, whether it be in Linden or Pearlsboro. This will not do a thing to give anybody any motivation for your refinery to close, period. Might that happen? And I say this with love. And 25 years from now, I hope it does, because we've converted to where we're not using the extent of fossil fuels that are required. But the reason why a refinery will close in New Jersey will be because the companies can't make money. Not to punish our state in any way, shape, or form. Hopefully their investment, the workforce, and the quality of the work in those refineries will be such to keep them here. But this bill isn't going to have any sway on that, one way or the other. And P.S. Exxon left because in Texas they changed the law so there's no transparency, no power as it relates to shareholders. That's why they left. Nothing to do with the business climate here. It had to do, they were motivated by laws that further favor big corporations. So with that, what got lost in a lot of today is the beauty within which the funds, when we meet those legal challenges, which will come, and we have an amazing Attorney General's office who is built in and is waiting for this fight in the same way that they are dealing with our reasonable laws with guns and a life. They'll do a wonderful job at this. And the preliminary rulings of the other states that have gone forward are such that we've refined our bill to make certain it's even that stronger from the legal challenges that will indeed come, is where that money will go to. And it's like, just like the Garden State Preservation Trust Fund that we all, in a bipartisan way, unanimously voted for as far as the distribution. It's going to be distributed just like that, through a similar kind of system, with percentages already carved out, going to BPU, who will do things relating to infrastructure, going to the Department of Health, who will deal with our hospitals, the Department of Education dealing with our schools, Department of Transportation, with the grid and our bridges and tunnels. So we've designed this in a way that each year will convene in the way we are, and we'll predict that in a bipartisan way, we'll parse this money for the things that have to be done. Again, this isn't, building stadiums, if you will, that this is basically assuring that the quality of our lives, both as residents and as businesses in our economy, can withstand what we know is coming. And unfortunately, not to, what's the word you use, Senator, not to be the Cassandra about this, but it's coming, and someone's have to pay for it. And to me, this is the fairest thing that we can do. So again, my thanks to all of you for a very spirited, civil discussion, as it should be. But I'm proudly voting yes, and I hope we get this out of budget to the governor's desk, and we all make a little history together. Thank you.
Vice Chairman Green.
I'm going to vote yes, I want to commend my colleagues, John and Bob, for being the sponsors of this very important bill. I have heard on a one-to-one as well as listening here today from the business community. I also thought the statement you just gave right now was excellent, John. So I think that we have met the concerns, and while I fully understand why the business community might feel that way, I'm not 100% sure they're right. This is a very difficult situation, and it will cost a lot of money, it will provide money, and all in all, I think this is the right direction to go because climate change is one of the major problems we have. So I vote yes.
So now the 3-hour speech. John said it all. Said it all, and his work on this bill has been tremendous. Proud to be a co-pilot with him, as is Senator Mukherjee. And this is, when you look back on your career, what's important and what's not important, this is one of the most important things that John and the environmental movement in this legislature has ever done. Thrilled to vote yes. So, nobody clap. Let me call the next bill. We still have a couple bills to get out. Congratulations, John.
Congratulations to all of us. Thank you.